We have Lynnette Johnson here. She has been committed to Ole Miss for 32 years, and we are ecstatic to have her. But unfortunately, we will be seeing her leave this year, which is unfortunate. But it's a gift and a curse, right? We wanted just to sit down with you here at the Social Responsibility and Engagement Department to talk a little bit about your tenure, right? 32 years, that's a long time. So in terms of just can you describe that? Describe 32 years of just being at an institution that long.
So you said one word, so I'm going to start with the one word, right?
Yeah.
One question was one word. Relationships. So that's the one word that I would say that sums up my 32 years. I had one of our colleagues that came in and said, "Hey, let's make you a big collage of your 32 years here." And I was like, "Wow, wouldn't that be cool?" But what pictures do I pull out? What memories do I pull out? So I looked and I said, they're all right here. I said, from being on the sidelines as an athletic trainer to being on the sidelines as an administrator to being in meetings when we build facilities, to have sat at the table when we built the rifle range with the city, to have an opportunity to start the Women's Sports Awareness Week in 1998, just to let people know on campus that we had 10 women's sports, and bought the centerfold of the Daily Mississippian because we didn't have media back then. We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have all of this social media, just to bring awareness to women's sports, and then get the opportunity to work with men's sports as well. So really, we don't have enough time for me to talk about my career because it was just so great. The athletes, the coaches, and the staff that I have been blessed to work with over the 32 years are ingrained in my memory. And it's fun when I get to sit down with one or two of them that stop into town, or "You're still there." And I'm like, "Is that good or is that bad?" "You look the same." And I'm like, "Okay, I either looked 54 then or I look 23 now. Whichever one you want to pick." So Lynnette is not going to be there anymore. But it's 32 years of relationships.
Like, talk to us about just the tenure of how did it help you with your professional and personal growth. I'm sure there was ups and downs, there were challenges that you faced, but in terms of just the personal growth and the professional growth, like how did that look like? How did Ole Miss shape you?
Well, you don't do things by yourself. If you think that, then think again. So I sit here very, very humbled and proud of my 32 years, but I didn't do it by myself. I got a phone call from Leroy Mullins when I was a senior in college, and he offered me a job, sight unseen, on the spot, to be a graduate student. So, he gave me an opportunity. I took it. So I would say, take those opportunities when they're given to you. And then they created a position for me, and I took it. And so then Coach Chancellor and the women's basketball team welcomed me in to their very tight-knit family. I mean, I have, all those women, from Peggy Gillum. I mean, Peggy and I have been together my entire career here. She's been here, longer than me, but they allowed me on the bus, because back then that's all we did is get on a bus. They allowed me on the bus, and they allowed me to be a part of their lives. And so I would say that having advocates to help were key for me. There weren't a lot of women in the athletic department in 1989 that were administrators. I mean, let's just be clear. They were mostly clerical workers. We didn't have, I don't think we had maybe one women's head coach at that time. And so there weren't a ton of role models that you would look at to say, and we talk about this representation. Yeah. If you take a look at somebody who looks like you, then it brings value to what you want to do. So I had to go across campus to find executive women, and I was blessed that there were some across campus. Our university attorney, vice chancellor for development, Dr. Staten, our provost, My academic advisor, Linda Chitwood, who ended up being a dean on campus. And so I had places, so I seeked, if that's a word, those women out to help me in my pathway. And so, and then I had great, in this profession, you have to have men that are willing to advocate for you. And so I'm not here today if I don't have a running list of men that advocated. I had to do the work, don't get me wrong.
Of course.
All right. I mean, the University of Mississippi they aren't just going to put you in a spot if you're not doing the work. So, but they have to value that and see that. So, yeah, having people alongside me to support me.
In terms of just the adversities you faced as a woman, just in this particular space, and you mentioned back then there weren't a lot. So were there any adversities that kind of stick out to you that you remember, or even now that you've overcome?
Well, everybody has adversities. And again, when I joined the University of Mississippi in 1989 as a graduate student athletic trainer, my office was in the field house. And so a lot of people don't know where the field house is. That's the FedEx Academic Support Center, where you are. So that's where I started. And it was an all-male facility. I'm not a man. I didn't have a bathroom. There was not one restroom designated for women. I had to go outside, around the front, up a flight of steps, which is the steps in the lobby, up those steps. And when you got to the top of the stairs where the elevator is now was just a standard restroom. It had a latch. And that was my bathroom from 1989 to 1994. So you go, what? Well, it's just going to the back. It's just something that I did. I didn't go complain about it. It was a facility that was built in the 50s before women were apart. And so I could have taken that and fussed for 5 years that I have a women's facility to use. But I didn't. I just kept doing my job. Yeah. I had to go outside and kept doing my job. And we added more women, and then we built 3 restrooms, and there was still just me. So I had 3 restrooms in 94. So I went from none to, I had lots of restrooms. But back in the day, to be quite honest, there wasn't a lot of women's gear either. And you go, let's talk about some other adverse, but sometimes people don't think about it. I was handed all men's stuff. Wow. I was just telling the story of bike shorts. Everybody remember bike shorts? They don't fit over women's hips. They don't look good on women.
Right.
Okay. And I put them on and marched down to the equipment room and said, this don't work. So I took some of my adversities with the intent that, it wasn't intentional. I mean, it's the sign of the times. And so I stayed. I was ever present. I advocated when I needed to, as I continued to move up the chain. You talk about money. I didn't make a lot of money. I didn't make as much as the men. Probably until the last 2 years did I make the same amount as the men.
Yeah.
32 years, last 2.
Wow.
So, those are those things. Now, and I was better to advocate for you. I can go in and get you a pay raise. You can tell Jen that. I can go and get you a pay raise before I can go in and advocate for myself. That's something that I would tell women, learn to do for yourself. It's great to be able to advocate for others, but I was always better at that. And so some of that was probably my fault as well, because I just didn't do it. That's what I wrote my dissertation on, advocating for yourself. So looking back, I can see that. Yeah, I mean, women's athletics, it was a very different time in the entire world, not just at the University of Mississippi, on how women were taken. Now, and I was part of the #1 women's team. I mean, women's basketball, 1989 to when I stepped in to become the first female head athletic trainer in the Southeastern Conference overseeing football. I mean, we were top 10, we were top 5. They're like, oh, the women can beat the men. I mean, that's how good we were. So I was part of a program that was respected. Doesn't mean we got anything more. Doesn't mean we didn't get the bad practice time. Men got the prime time. The women were 12 to 3. I mean, it's just, we just did those things. And so when I became an administrator in 1998 and left the training room, which was hard to do, I have to admit, I enjoyed being an athletic trainer. And I'd like to think that my athletes that I worked with, which still call me, and still, we still keep up with each other. When I fell and hurt myself this year, they were all like, we'll come rehab. I'm like, nope, 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 nope. We'll come, you'll get that range of motion, Miss Lynnette. I'm like, no. But I felt like I had an opportunity to make a bigger difference for more than just the injured athlete at the time, which is very important. I'm still, sports medicine is very, very close to my heart. I mean, who would have thought we would have the conglomerate that we have now when we were just using ice bags and stim back in the day? Ice fixed everything, Veron. Still does. Yeah, so I just wanted a bigger voice, and I wanted to have representation at the table. So it was me and the guys. Wow. I was the only female from 1998 to 2002. I was the only female administrator at the table. Wow. In the department. And so when I spoke of women's issues, nobody else around the table are going to understand it. Yep. Because they're not a woman. So that, and so it was, it's just a unique time on those things, but I'm still here. So obviously people valued what I had to say, and nobody asked me to leave. Wasn't always easy. So I would say that is another piece of young women realizing that sometimes it's not going to be easy in the room, but something's going to get through. Does that make sense? I'm here 32 years later. I'm a deputy. I'm the number 2 in the department.
Talk to us just about, how did you get confident? How did you get confident of being someone that can advocate for themselves or advocate for someone else? And quite frankly, I know it's tough, right? It's super tough, but I'm sure there was a moment that clicked on for you and said, hey, no, I have to do this and I have to say this.
When I went in and sat down with Pete Boone and said I was interested in being the next administrator, senior woman administrator, I told him that if you want a yes person, don't hire me. Now, I just went in and asked to be considered for the job, and he sat very quietly, didn't say a word. I went in and had my own meeting, Veron got up and left, and he just sat there. So, and he was my boss for 15 years, and I'm where I'm at because he allowed me to move in spaces, and he trusted me enough to move in those spaces. And we didn't always agree. Trust me. There were times when he wanted to move his office down the hall so I could just walk around and talk to him. But I didn't take no I learned that if you take the first no, sometimes let's just be respectful. I wasn't the boss, but I would go in prepared for my meeting, and I would say that sometimes as a woman, again, this is through my dissertation research and personal experience, that I would go in and I would present, I need to make X amount of money, and here's why. Well, we don't have the budget this year, no. Okay, thanks. And I get up and go back and do my job. Well, I started coming back. I didn't take the first no. I joked that it took 5 no's before I was good. And so I started, and I don't know when it clicked that that's what I had to do, or that's what I should do, or was there a risk in doing it? But that's what I did. I stopped. If there was a huge value point in it, I went back, recalculated on how I needed to approach it.
That's good. That's
good. Went back in. Yeah.
Ooh, that's so good. Within your tenure of 32 years, you've seen people go, you've seen people leave, you've seen people come in, you've seen projects being built, you've seen the pavilion to the Gilliam Center, all these different projects. What was your favorite project? And I guess, what are some intricate details that people don't really know that you can disclose, of course, that was just some of the favorite pieces at Ole Miss?
I have 2. So I have two favorite facility projects. That would be the collaboration of the city, the state, the federal government, and the University of Mississippi for the rifle range.
Nice.
Took 4 years. And to this day, I'm the only one left that was part of the original meeting to this moment.
Wow.
I have all the plans in my drawer. And it almost didn't happen for our rifle team. I mean, I had to advocate because we changed athletic directors at the time. And they're like, well, we're not going to do that. I'm like, well, where are they going to shoot? So that was a really tough moment. It was about 2002, 2003, where I had to pretty much puffer up to get it. And it's the best facility in the country. And, you know, clearly our team won a championship there, and they're going to the NCAA. And so I'm really proud of what I did on that facility. And then the Gillum Sports Center, I wasn't part of the original plan. I was an athletic trainer at the time when it was built. I opened up in 97, and then I moved in 98. We had no air conditioning in the arena to play volleyball in Mississippi.
Right.
So I and my office was in that building. So we had air in the locker rooms and the office space, but in the arena where there were 3 tennis courts, a auxiliary basketball court, and our volleyball court, there was nothing in there. The court nothing said Ole Miss. It said Ole Miss volleyball. You think all the graphics we have now? There was nothing in that facility. It wasn't even the Gillum Sports Center at that time. It was called the Women's Athletic Center, the WAC.
Uh-oh.
So I said, yeah, this isn't going to work. So I worked to get air conditioning first. Then I started on, if you're going to have a building that says women on it, you better have air. So I worked through that, went all the way to the chancellor. And then in 2000, I think it was 2000. So 97, 2000, the chancellor and I were talking, and he's like, well, what name should we put on the building? Duh. So Peggy and Jennifer Gillum. So I was part of naming that building.
Wow.
And then I got to call both women. The chancellor's like, you do it, Lynnette. I got to call Peggy Gillum and Jennifer Gillum.
Wow.
And let them know we were naming a facility after them and their family, because they're from Abbeville, they're local. And it was one of the coolest moments of my career, because the humbleness of those 2 women for what they've done throughout their entire careers in basketball and just life in general. It was so cool. And then it was the largest building dedication when we renamed it, because I think I'm related to the Gillums. So everybody is, we have so many, I say I'm an adjunct member of the Gillums. We had 450 people in the Gillum Center, and I worked so hard on that ceremony that day to make it so special, and wrote my speech, and it was a moment I'll never forget. And then the Gillum Center today is not the Gillum Center I stepped into in 1998, and so I've worked really, really, really hard on that facility to make it a premier facility. And if I walk in there and I know somebody drops a piece of trash on the floor, I take it personally. I mean, really, you could ask Matt Mott, who's been, a coach for us for 11 years, who's lived through all this. He's like, he'll go into a meeting with some of his colleagues down the hallway, and they'll say, we're doing this. He goes, you better check with Lynnette. She might not like that. So those 2, and then my really first facility to be from the ground up was the Toohey Center in 09. And I'm pretty proud of that facility too. But those first 2 were harder and longer with renovation, and the money wasn't there, the time wasn't there. So those were, a little more impactful.
What do an individual who, not only just a woman, right, that's striving to be at SWA, but anyone who's striving to be their best self in an organization, what do they have to do to ensure that they can reach the pinnacle of collegiate athletics?
So I'm going to do my SWA pitch right now. I don't like that title.
Go for it.
Is it the senior man administrator who's the AD? Do we have I'll just be honest, we do, because it's the diversity of the senior Black administrator. We have the senior everybody but the man's job is designated.
Mm.
I'd like to see that title go away. I don't think we're ready for it. It is a very, very valuable title. So I hope who gets designated the SWA, not deputy, not anything else that I do. You have to be a woman to be the SWA. That's important. It's an important piece. I'm always introduced as the SWA. I'm a deputy. So that jabs. So my counterpart males, they're always introduced as their title. Senior associate, assistant AD. I've been an assistant AD my entire career because everybody just says she's an assistant AD SWA. No, I'm a deputy AD SWA.
Okay.
Hey, but again, that's where women, I don't ever correct somebody standing there because I don't want to embarrass them. So they introduce my counterpart, who's a deputy, a male, and then they say, well, this is Lynnette, she's been here, she's the SWA. But he's designated as the deputy. So with those pieces, and I think it's changing. I really do, but I still believe there are a lot of women out there now that do not take the SWA title. They take the deputy title and not the SWA title in our league and across the country, because the SWA title may not get you in the office next to mine, which is the AD's office.
Wow.
The deputy title will. I wrote that in my dissertation as well. And so it's a very interesting dynamic. And so I was very strategic. I got the deputy title 3 years ago, and I did not give up the SWA title because I felt like it says senior woman administrator. I don't want to take anything away from my colleagues who've made other decisions. That's fine. I just felt that where I sat, that was me. So it's a very powerful designation. It's not a job. What job is it? I don't know. I don't know. I'm a sport administrator. I'm over HR. I do academics. I'm in charge of Title IX. That's deputy. Yep. Lynnette. SWA Lynnette is a woman with a mouth, apparently, is a woman. So I would say, I say all that to say for women out there, know what you want to accomplish going in to your role and what you're doing and where you're at. If that SWA title, designation, role, whatever it is part of it, that's big. Yeah. That's big. I hope it goes away. I hope we don't have to designate to have an SWA, but there are still programs across the country that don't have a woman sitting at the table.
As a woman, we bear the burden. It's not a burden. I'm sorry. Maybe for me now it's a burden, but we bear children and we juggle our careers. You have two lovely daughters. Your wife. How are you juggling having children? As your student athletes, and also your children at your home. Like what does that dynamic look like?
Yeah, that one's a tough one because I think every woman it'll be different. It'll look different for them. So I think we're all, every family dynamic is different. My husband and I chose very early to follow my career. Good job for He's like, I'll retire, you go, because we knew that's where our greatest opportunity was. And sometimes you don't find men that are willing to do that. And so that changed the dynamic in our family for my two children. Because, mom was gone more. Mom had to balance that more. Really only in the last, I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. And really only in the last 3 to 4 years that they really get it because they were kids. I'm just the mom. Yeah. I mean, when I leave this office and go home, I'm wife and mom. I thought that this was going to make it easier on me, and it wasn't. It just made me more accessible. So I would tell my colleagues, if you want to have kids, find a way to turn that off, communicate with your staff, say, take some personal time, put it on silent. It will be there tomorrow. I didn't understand that because this was so new. I grew up with this. Now people, I'm saying, this was new and it came in. I thought this would make that I would be at home. If I'm at home on this, I'm not at home. And that's a hard lesson to learn, and I've had to learn it. That's part of the reason why I'm retiring, is so I can go home to my children. And and I'm blessed that the state of Mississippi retirement is healthy enough that I can do that and then return and do some teaching and have the ability to do that. I would tell my female colleagues who want to have a family, you can't get that time back.
Wow.
I'm trying. You can't. Once time passes, it's gone. So, and I tell this, so you can ask any of my coaches that are moms right now, and Kayla on staff, and I helped hire Kayla, Corey, Yolette, Marcia is a mom. The only Connie doesn't have kids, but all of those women, I was honest with them about that. So I would say that's the biggest thing. I had somebody text me today. She used to work for us, to congratulate me. And she's gone home with her 2 little boys. And she goes, I hope I get back into the thing. And I said, you know, enjoy it. You can't get that time back. And I have to admit, I have some guilt on that time, because I pursued trying to do it all, and sometimes you can't. So carve it out. There's a way to carve it out. I didn't know that. And again, I didn't have a lot of mentors to do that. So I would say, figure it out. You can't get that family, whether it's your kids, your husband, your parents, whatever it is, vacation's there for a reason. Turn it off. Go home at night. Find some time to turn it off.
Wow.
Be present when you're there. Don't be going, you know, oh, I got the, be present when you need to be present. And that's one of the things I've learned a lot in the last 2 years.
Whew. Lynnette, you just freed me up. You just freed me up. And I think, you know, whoever's watching this, they're really going to feel that. Be present. Be present. You can't get that time back. Wow, that's incredible. My last question to you is your legacy. What do you want to leave? You know, once, you know, yes, your time at Ole Miss is came and now leaving, but let's say, you know, when you leave this earth, what type of legacy do you want to leave?
That I was respected. I said that, you know, Peggy and I said that we love each other. We're not even in the same family. That as a relationship, it was my quote. You know, like what, you know, in all of that article in 32 years, I said it was the relationships.
Yeah.
I text Van Chancellor today. It's relationships. So if you talk to any of the, and I had student athletes that didn't like my decisions. I had staff members that don't like my decisions. Not everybody's don't like everybody's decisions, but I would say that as a whole, in the 90th percentile, I hope that if you ask anybody who engaged with me as a University of Mississippi Athletic Department employee, whether that was an athlete who was injured, parent that I was communicating with, coach, staff member, that I dealt with them respectfully and respected them.
Wow.
That is what I hope.
Lynnette Johnson, thank you so much. Thank you for your commitment to excellence here at the Social Responsibility Engagement Office with Ole Miss Athletics. We appreciate you, all you do. I know Dr. Jennifer Saxon, she talks about you through and through, and she mentions that a lot of the reason why she is here is because of you. So I thank you for just your leadership, your vision, and your persistence to stay consistent. And I wish you many, many, many more years of just being present with your family. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Faron. I appreciate it. Thanks. Bye-bye.